I know I've only got a few seconds before I lose your attention, so I want you to imagine something for just a minute. You stumble upon this lamp that for whatever reason you decide to rub. Maybe you see where I'm going with this. And to your surprise, a genie pops out. Genie maybe sounds a little bit like Will Smith. And Will Smith looks at you and he's like, "What's up? What do you want?" You get one wish. Anything you want in the world, I'll make it happen. You get one wish. What is it? You think about it for a second and you look at him and you're like, "Well, Mr. Will Smith Genie, I don't ever want to work for a boss again." And he looks at you and he's like, "What? Anything in the world. You can have anything that you want. And the thing that you tell me is one thing that you don't want? Are you out of your mind? You're fired. Cool. You win." This is stupid and silly. But how often do we do this? What I've found is that this is something that happens all the time in the way that we set goals, in the way that we set our dreams and our visions. And we shoot ourselves in the foot regularly with this because we don't actually know what we want. We just know what we don't want. We're gonna dive into that today and some of the things that we can look out for, how that's shown up in my life and in other people's lives, and what we can do about it. My name is Patrick Menefee, and I'm here to help you level up your money, your mindset, and your mission in order to help you become the best possible version of yourself. Now, these videos drop every single Monday, so make sure you hit the subscribe button so that you can be notified when they come out. And if you want a little bit more, I've got a newsletter that comes out every other week. You can click the link in the description to subscribe. So what does this look like? I'll give you an example based on a former client of mine. This person was working a job that he didn't want to work anymore, and he was looking for how he could get out of it by buying a franchise. And based on my experience buying a business and leaving my job, we started working together. And we started digging in. We started talking about the process and started talking about what it looked like to become a franchise owner, what the timeline looked like, what the finances looked like. Alongside of that, I was also asking him a lot about why he didn't like his job, what he didn't like about what he was doing, what he actually wanted, and where he was trying to go. And this really interesting picture started to unfold. We started discussing the timeline for what the franchise looked like and how long it would take to get things built up. Talked about what the finances looked like and when he would start actually receiving a paycheck and when the business would be profitable and when he would actually start making money from this thing. And what was fascinating was it was going to be over a year before he was actually going to be able to pull in any income. He was going to go from a very comfortable job that he had and he didn't love to going a year without money. On top of that, as we dug into what he didn't like about his job, there was a lot of things about not having control, about not agreeing with the direction that things were going and not being able to control a lot of that. But then in the franchise, as we started talking about the way that the process worked and the guardrails of this franchise model, he was stepping into a very similar situation. He couldn't control the customer base, couldn't control some of the guidelines that were put in place from the franchise, and he had this narrow lane of responsibility. And so the fascinating part about all of this was everything that he didn't want in his job, he was basically building in some way, shape, or form in his business. And he had no idea what he truly wanted. When I asked him what he wanted to buy a franchise because he wanted to leave his job. But when I dug into what he wanted, he didn't know because he was so focused on the things that he didn't want. And this is a really good example because I've done the same thing in my life. And what's funny is, even as a coach, it's so easy to see it in other people. But why is it so hard to understand it and see it in ourselves? It's easy to see the fact that, well, you're just running away from something, man. You don't like where you're at and you're trying to go somewhere different, but you don't have any idea where you're trying to go. That can be easy to see, but what does that look like and how do we define it in ourselves? And for me, one of the ways that this showed up the most is in simple words like freedom. We talk a lot about financial freedom. I talk about it plenty on this channel. You've heard me talk about it if you've watched any of these videos. We want all these different types of freedoms. We want the freedom to quit our job. We want financial freedom. We want time freedom. But what do you want to do with the freedom? The freedom sounds really good, but freedom just means I don't have something else. When my coach asked me this question of what do you want? What is your perfect day? What is your dream life? I didn't have a good answer either. A lot of my answers that I had were the things that I didn't want. It was the freedom that I wanted to have to make decisions. Well, what are the decisions that we want to make? And where things started to change for me and where I was able to get excited about where I was going and get passion behind what I do is when I started getting really clear on the things that I do want. Take that freedom, put yourself in that position and figure out what you're doing. What does time look like? One of the exercises that was helpful for me was imagine that you have everything that you want. Everything is taken care of. Finances are taken care of for the rest of your life and for all future generations. You never have to work another day in your life. What do? Where do you spend your time? What do you enjoy doing? And if you have all of that, what kind of stuff are you doing with your family on a daily basis, on a weekly basis? How do you spend your time? Because we spend all this time pursuing freedom, we spend all this time pursuing choice, we end up getting back into this rabbit hole and into this cycle of just pursuing more and more and more and more freedom because we never know what we're gonna do with it. So this is a big deal in my life. I've seen this in other people's lives, I've seen this in clients' lives, I've seen this in friends' lives. My encouragement to you is dive into what you want. Look at the places in your life where you're focusing on the things that you don't want. Look out for the words like choice and freedom, all great things, but what's the so what behind it? And in next week's video, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because next week's video, we're gonna talk about finding purpose, finding passion in what you do, and figuring out what you do want so you can pursue that. But you can only pursue something if you know what you're working towards. It's a lot harder to pursue something when all you're doing is looking behind you and running away. So this has been a life changer for me. It's changed the way that I pursue my business, pursue everyday life, and I hope it does the same for you.